Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on AI in the contact center. I'm Mike Kaplan, CMO at AVOXI. We've all heard the buzz. The potential for companies to use AI to improve the customer experience and optimize customer service processes is significant. And voice is central to many of the AI applications that are already showing value as many companies move out of pilots to enterprise-wide global deployments. So today we are going to dive into some of the specific strategies, best practices, considerations, learnings for making voice-led AI customer service experiences work. Joining me today are two experts who live and breathe this space of voice and AI. First and foremost, welcome to Thomas Rivera, Executive Vice President of Global Sales at NLPearl. NLPearl is a voice AI provider and an AVOXI partner. We've been able to work together on multiple customer engagements. So excited to have Thomas join us. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
And secondly, my colleague, Randy Layman, he is AVOXI's Chief Technology Officer, a long time, my personal favorite technology executive and thought leader in the cloud voice software platform space. So let's dive in. Thomas, let's just set the stage for everyone and get everybody on the same at the same wavelength. Talk to us about how AI is truly transforming the contact center landscape today.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike and Randy, for having me. I mean, some of the things I'm going to say may be obvious, but definitely have to put that as a foundation. The first thing is what we see is conversational AI replacing tier one workflows. And what is that? Typically a contact center and even the businesses that we engage with that have large call volumes. Generally, their volume is 60 to 80% of their volume comes from FAQs, reservation lookups, appointment scheduling, order status, simple troubleshooting, and that ties up the phone lines. And so that's the first thing that we're seeing transform. And those are just some of the use cases that are coming up pretty quickly. So far, we've seen in general anywhere from 35 to close to 60% where we can offset some of those calls. It's improving as we go, but those are things that we can definitely take on. The other thing that we see is the ability to scale quickly with AI, right? So for example, historically a contact center, if they need more humans to pick up the phones, they either outsource that to a BPO or they need to hire 10, 50, 100 people. How fast can you hire those people within a reasonable amount of time? With AI, you can scale fast, right? We can deploy 1,000 agents within minutes and then have a 1,000 concurrency in terms of picking up the calls, taking orders, whatever it may be. So that's a huge one as well. The others that we see is that AI can embed really deeply into business systems, CRMs, PMS systems, reservation systems, Slack, email, your typical ERP systems. And that's really a huge advantage that obviously humans can embed themselves into those systems. We can access those systems. We can pull records from those systems, but we can't embed ourselves in those systems. So being able to kind of do those workflows in real time, it's a huge differentiator. The other thing I would mention to round it all out is the ability to do real-time understanding, sentiment, data capture. Generally, these things are something that processes later on. You can get this in real time. The agent can kind of handle those calls, transfer a call if it's not going well, and do all those things that normally a human would do on the front end. And that alleviates a lot of pressure from the contact center.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Really appreciate that baseline. So with that, what are some of the more exciting developments that you're seeing with AI voice agents?
Yeah, I mean, being at an AI startup, we're on the ground level with a lot of these things, and we're always trying to figure out, how to make improvements. But the most exciting thing we think is the improvements on text to speech, having that human-like capability of speaking to someone. Obviously, we know that we can record human voices, but the ability to actually have a really good conversation with someone. Also improvements on the speech to text modeling where we could improve on conversational interruptions. When does the agent jump in? When does the jump out? Latency. These are things that we all commonly hear about, but they're getting better and better. NLPearl has been working on its own text-to-speech for some time now. We think we have one of the best models out. We've been using for our customers only at the moment, but that's really a huge one. Also, real-time reasoning and decision-making, the ability for agents to kind of not only just be on the voice side, but actually make decisions and move things around for a company. Also, the other thing I would mention is the ability for memory and personalization. That's a huge one. Memory is a big deal in AI right now. If you hear about some of the new things, innovation that people are talking about, like how do we keep personalization and memory over a long period of time? And there's a lot of new exciting things about what we call deep agents, where agents can do tasks over a long period of time, so maybe potentially hours, right? And obviously, some of these triggers are based on voice, and the customer's asking for something that they need done, and the agent is able to kind of service that. So I think the way to look at it is shifting from just a voice agent or bot to more of like an AI digital worker, right? AI digital labor that can actually do actions, do functions for you, but also have that human quality where you don't feel like you're speaking to a bot. I mean, right now, if you speak to some voice agents, you kind of can tell, but it's getting to a level at some point, and we think, relatively soon, that it's going to be hard to distinguish it.
Thanks, Thomas. Randy, what do you think about that? What are some of the developments you're most excited about in the space?
One of the developments is just the wide variety of languages, right? For a long time, we've had voice IVRs, right? You could say or speak one or say the word operator. They were limited to the major languages. As we've gotten deeper into conversational AI, you're also seeing a lot more of the second and third tier languages that, they aren't the number 1, 2 popularity really being adapted. Another really big thing that I'm excited about, Thomas touched on it, is the fluidity of the conversation, right? The fact that we're now moving from a turn-based, I say something, I wait, I hear something, I say something. It's now actually having a conversation with the agent on the other end. That has really opened up a lot of scenarios for our customers, being able to move transactions, move the mundane transactions from the humans to the bots, leaving the humans for the complicated things where, hospitality, I'm booking 3 flights and I got to go through Albuquerque and just the really complicated transactions that take more time to get done.
Thanks, Randy. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about how do we actually implement these types of solutions and applications. So, Thomas, what are some of those key considerations you talk to prospects and clients about when they're evaluating how to implement AI voice agents?
Yeah, I think the first thing we always mention is identifying a high value, like repeatable workflow. Okay. Evaluate why customers are calling, volume patterns, maybe time consuming tasks that come up, common repetitive questions, and then steps that are making agents or human agents do maybe 50 to 100 times a day, maybe a little less than that. But really looking at that and then figuring out, okay, let's attack the high volume things that our agents are doing that are very repetitive and try to attack that first. Okay. That's usually the first thing that we try to identify. Okay. And then from there, figure out what actions the agent needs to take within your systems. Is it CRMs? Is it PMS systems, the EHR for clinics? Is it booking a platform, inventory systems, things like that? And I think being able to identify, okay, once we understand those systems that need to be connected to, then how do we start working with the AI now to implement and improve some of those repetitive tasks? So the agent takes over those repetitive tasks. The agent then gets embedded in the APIs or into different systems and being able to kind of work through that. So really trying to identify in the beginning what are those high value repeatable workflows and reducing that first. And then we can work on more complex use cases. But usually that's where we like to start. And identifying that early is very easy. You can ask the customer, well, what are your calls about? What's the number one reason? I'll give you an example. In the hotel industry, people call about the most random things, and you don't need to call for finding out if you can bring your pets to the hotel, or if you. Same thing with flights. We have some aviation companies that we're working on, and they get a lot of their calls are generally the most basic questions, FAQ questions, things that you don't need a human to have to respond to that. Now, obviously, they can find it on a website, but sometimes people don't search, and you can't find it. It's not obvious. So working through that first, and then we can figure out other ways for the agents to kind of take over some other complex tasks.
That makes sense. Seems like that would get that path to value and time to value down pretty quickly by focusing there. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about voice infrastructure and where AVOXI comes in. Randy, one of the least talked about components of this, but mission critical is that voice infrastructure. Tell us about the role that voice plays in enabling these applications.
Well, if you think about it, it's kind of obvious if you actually look at it, right? If the AIs, if the bots cannot hear the audio, they can't respond. And if the audio from the bot doesn't make it back to the caller or is garbled or is really robotic, it's a really poor experience. So having that crystal clear communication channel back and forth is really important, but also important is the latency, right? We talked a couple of times about the fluidity of the conversation. If that audio takes a long time to get there, that's just going to add more delay to the bot being able to respond. It's not a lot different from humans, but humans are maybe a little bit more accommodating in bad call quality or marginal call quality than the bots are. And if we can remove that, Thomas's team doesn't have to worry about how do I make up for missing some packets. They can work on how do I make better decisions. And so having that really good end-to-end crystal clear quality is important. The other element of that, we talk to a lot of customers about security, right? Having encryption, having security, being able to do those checkboxes just makes your security audits go so much faster by saying, oh, yeah, they've got PCI, they've got SOC, they've got HIPAA, whatever the requirements are. Getting that audio through the infrastructure is just such an easier challenge when you have the security already taken care of.
How do you think about latency and the potential risks, when if a company is deploying, say, within a given country domestically like the US versus trying to do this globally? I mean, how much of a difference can there be? What are some thoughts on how to optimize that?
So our experiments are working with customers. We have found the best approach is if you can stay on the same continent. Traveling next door, especially places like Europe, that really you're talking sub-millisecond types of latency. But when you're trying to get a call from maybe Australia back to the United States, you're talking maybe a few hundred milliseconds. And that's just putting a pregnant pause into every turn of the conversation. It's annoying. And then you add just a little bit of a technical glitch to that, and that becomes a problem. Trying to keep it on the same continent is really what we're trying to do with our customers and trying to help them to optimize their networks for that intra-continental communication.
Can you talk a little bit more about, from a technical perspective, how the integration with a platform like AVOXI's and NLPearl works?
So the integration with AVOXI and NLPearl, in our system, it works on the SIP protocol and it's encrypted by default. You go into our UI. We have a great integration with NLPearl now. You can enter some of your NLPearl credentials, and then we'll go find the bots that you've already configured on the NLPearl side, select which bot you want which phone number mapped to, and then everything works from there. You now flop over to the NLPearl and you can get to customize the bots and tell the bots what to do. If it's time to escalate back to a human when containment doesn't happen, that call just comes back to AVOXI, and then we route it into wherever your contact center is. So we've really worked together with the NLPearl team to make this as simple and as painless as we can, where it's point and click, minimal configuration, just get it done, and then configured securely by default. We spent a lot of time and effort trying to make the hard simple so that the customers can really focus on their business and their needs.
So Thomas, can you talk to us about regulatory considerations companies should be aware of when deploying an AI voice agent?
It's a big one. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'll start with the US for now. Right now, there's no federal law on it. There are some other things that we mentioned, but California recently in January did the bot disclosure law. Basically, anytime you're interacting with an AI or any kind of service, you must clearly disclose that it's an AI, speaking to you. So even if it's an inbound use case versus outbound use case, you have to mention that this is an AI. And that was recent. Illinois and Texas have some biometric voice laws that basically, if you're doing any kind of voice data that's being analyzed, even for temporary use cases, you have to disclose that. So that's also there. You also have CCPA, CPRA with California. That has more to do with data usage. So you have to, have some way of letting the customer know that you're collecting that data. Or, if you can redact the PI, personal information, making sure that you adhere to that. So those are things that are coming up. PCI is a big one too. There's obviously standards on accepting someone's credit card over the phone with AI, right? And how that works, and making sure that we're not storing the CV code behind the credit card, and not storing the credit card information on the transcript. I mean, there's a lot of layers there that you have to adhere to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And then you also have the big one, which has been around for a very long time, which is the FCC and telemarketing rule. Okay. So the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, if you're doing an outbound cold call to a customer that you've never engaged, well, not a customer, you never engaged with, okay, you can't do that with AI right now. Okay, that's one thing you can't do, right? You can't just call someone out of the blue and mention, if you've never got, and you've had no way of them getting their information. So usually if you did an ad, some kind of consent where they ask for a request for information, that's not a problem if they're not really a customer. But cold calling 100%, you don't have any consent of that person, you have to adhere to the TCPA rule. So you need to have consent. You can't, you have to have an opt-out mechanism. The agent must also have a way of identifying the company name as well. So TCPA, I would invite everyone to read that ruling and make sure that they're adhering to that. So those are some of the things on the US side for sure. And then we have the obvious, right? GDPR, where, we have to make sure that you adhere to transparency in terms of data collection and things like that. So we adhere to that as well. You also find now in Asia, things are changing as well. Dubai has some regulations that they're putting forward. India as well has their own. In India, for example, your SIP infrastructure has to be within India if you're doing any outbound calls. So that's something that's also coming up as well.
So it sounds like some very, AI specific regulations, still early, maybe a bit fragmented, but then there's also how do these intersect with, some of all of the compliance regulations that we know. That seems like there's been some progress there in terms of how to think about AI in the context of things like GDPR.
Yeah, I had one more thing. So on NLPearl's platform, we try to enhance our platform in the best way possible, where you can have no transcript, you can have no recording, you can mask private information on any recording or transcript. We're adding more tools to adhere to some of those rules even further, even though it may be beyond what's required. So some of those front-end tools are there to protect and help some of our customers are using it. We also have disclosures letting people know, like, hey, if you're setting up an outbound campaign, make sure you're adhering to this rule for not only TCPA, but also for the California bot disclosure law, which is a big one. So even inbound, outbound, you have to disclose.
So we talked about at the top that we're moving from pilot to implementation and scale. So let's talk about some examples of customers that are successfully using AVOXI and NLPearl together. Thomas, what can you share with us?
Yeah. I won't share any names because I didn't get any consent so far, but I would definitely share the use cases and the company, company profile. So we're working with a really large channel manager in the hotel segment that services 150,000 hotels globally, and AVOXI is our partner exclusively for that deal. The reason why is some obvious reasons: global coverage that AVOXI has, the simplicity in being able to spin SIP trunks, and also being able to cover the regions that they have. They have some Asian regions that not easy to find numbers and procure numbers from. Not only that, the fact that AVOXI has data centers, globally, huge deal, as Randy pointed out, about, latency and being able to give quality service to those customers. Some of these customers are calling from different countries back and forth. And so it was really important to have that. So things are going really well. That use case right now is an inbound use case, servicing thousands and thousands of calls. They're looking to continue to scale with us, with AVOXI as well as a partner. Okay. We have another company that we're working with. They're based out of Europe, but they have operations in Australia, Korea, Japan, Tokyo, and throughout Europe and US. They provide global keyless entry solutions throughout the world. We also went to AVOXI because they needed Australian phone numbers. They also needed infrastructure in Korea. We needed to make sure we can service that properly. So really good partnership there. Things are going very well. They have an outbound use case for that use case, which is going to customers that they know that they have, which is really nice. In addition, we are working in Dubai with one of the largest conference centers that does conferences globally. throughout EMEA, Asia, and Europe. We had to procure numbers from Morocco, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are not places that are very easy to procure phone numbers for. And AVOXI was able to deliver on that, service us, help us close with those customers. So we're really grateful for that. And those are some of the use cases that I can bring up. We have a very other ones, small ones that here or there that come up, but we obviously, those are the three big ones right now that have some really big scaling capabilities.
Randy, I know you've been involved in solutioning, some of these offerings. What benefits and improvements are you seeing customers experience after implementing AI voice agents?
Right. And Thomas kind of talked about some of this at the top, some of the benefits that we're seeing, but it's shifting transactions, shifting the mundane transactions from the humans to the machine, right? Calling up the hotel and asking, what hours is the pool open? Or calling the airline and asking, do I get peanuts on my flight? All of those types of questions that are really just so simple to answer, they're taking burden off of the human agents. One anecdote that I like to talk about, though, and Thomas kind of talked about, being able to scale up rapidly. We do a lot of travel and hospitality at AVOXI. We do those with NLPearl. We have a hotel chain, reservation center, that anytime there is a natural disaster, calls obviously have an influx. And so they're able to use a bot type approach to field some of those simple rebookings, field some of those simple cancellations. And we have a customer who is the call center is based out of China. A typhoon went through not that long ago through that region and had lots of cancellations across the entire region. And so instead of them having to call in a whole lot of people and have them work overtime, they were able to shift a little bit of the workflow to the bot, make it a little bit more aggressive on what it could contain. And they were able to manage that flood of calls, a little bit of elevated hold time, but not dramatic. And it was able to something that the system could actually take because bots were able to take the mundane cancellation, no problem. We'll get you into your refund. You need a rebooking. Let me get you to a human.
That's a really great example around speed and control. So thanks for sharing that. Shifting to sort of moving forward and on this theme of scaling, we talked, Thomas at the top talked about how to, how companies should think about where to get started. Randy, what about this question of scaling from pilot to production? How do you approach that? What are some of the real roadblocks that customers need to be thinking about when implementing them, and a little bit of how do you overcome those things?
It's a great question, right? Customers, you've done a successful pilot, you've done, one scenario, two scenarios, it's working pretty well, you've had great feedback. Now, how do we go wider? And there's a couple of challenges that you need to look at. The technical is probably the easiest, right? How do we identify the next workflow and the next kind of flow through the bots and get the bots to answer the next questions? But once you get past the pilot is where the human starts to be a problem. And contact center managers need to work with the contact center agents and help reassure them, this is helping to make your job easier, not getting rid of you. Give the reassurance that you're now going to have more time to help the complicated transactions, and you're not going to have to answer those easy questions anymore. You're also going to have to work with the compliance department, right? And in the pilot, you maybe did it, you maybe got around it, but as you really roll out into production, now's when we've got to do compliance, and we have to do compliance on the global scale, right? I might have done an initial pilot just in one country, just in one state. Now that we're going global, those questions become more complicated. So it's really kind of at the point that you're ready to graduate from pilot to production, the technology has probably worked itself out. Now it's the human and the business factors that need to come into play.
And I'll add one thing to that too. I think what I'm seeing as well is, I said some obvious things earlier about workflows and identify those things, but I think figuring out how you have the human in the loop with some of these processes, because I'll give you an example. We have a customer, a very large customer, and they want the capability of testing all their agents simultaneously, right? They want a lot of these evaluation tools. How is the agent performing? How's it doing, right? And we give a lot of analytics for that. But in theory, you should really figure out, okay, who's that going to be that person that's going to be in the loop where we can go in, evaluate the workflows that they're being done correctly. The agent's not saying something that's a little off. Right. So the human in the loop is really important to figure out and identifying that early on in the process. So you don't You can figure out warm transfer scenarios, things like that. Like, how are you going to process those things? So I find that to be something that it seems very obvious, but sometimes clients don't go after that first. I mean, it's one of the things they should be thinking about. Okay, how we're going to set up a process where now we can review.
Shifting from practical, let's sort of move to prognostication, maybe a little more pie in the sky. What are you thinking about in terms of the future and what it holds for AI in the contact center, and anything companies should start to particularly as we plan for 2026, prepare within their technology stack or from a business perspective to really take full advantage of AI? Thomas, why don't you start?
I'm trying to think of things that are not too obvious. I do think, though, right now at the moment, we should really be thinking about like what the agent's going to be able to do in the future, right? And so being able to consider some of those things that customers should figure out, it's going to be really embedded into your workforce somehow, some way. And being able to kind of have that hyper personalization is going to be very standard. So there's going to be things where the agent could just go ahead and process certain things and be able to do certain things that are currently not available right now, but it's going to happen over time. So I think really thinking through the future is most likely going to be multimodal reasoning. We're going to have the ability to have voice and text and audio and vision, and kind of really having a capability of agents being able to read a screenshot or image and also then respond to an email, then pick up the phone. And all of that automation, that multi-channel communication is going to be something that's going to be standardized. And then thinking about that now, are you buying a product that's fragmented right now when you're thinking about AI agents? So some people are buying AI voice agents, and then you'll have some other kind of service that they're also thinking of. So how do we make it multimodal? How do you think about multi-channel, where you have a complete capability in terms of your operations? And there's so many things that are happening right now. It's really hard to predict everything. I would say that what's going to really continue forward is that the improvements are going to continue to happen, and the agent's going to become, let's say more human, but more so the capability of having that communication that seems as if you're not speaking to a bot anymore. So thinking through how that's going to work through your workflows.
Great, thanks, Thomas. Randy, what do you think?
I think I echo a lot of what Thomas said, right? The bots are going to become more capable. We're going to see it include more context, more information. And we're going to continue to expand that. I think as a business, what you're looking at as we go 26 and beyond, the big things there is to be flexible, right? Having partners that are able to help you continue to grow, help you continue to explore new options, and then continue to have, I don't know if it's a curiosity or an investigation into what is pursuing, right? It's so easy for a customer to set up a bot and then just kind of forget about that bot and come back 6 months or 9 months later and realize the technology landscape has shifted. I could do so much more now. It's something that companies need to plan to continue to evolve, because we're in a very rapidly evolving market right now, and continue to expect that you're reinventing, refining, enhancing, and expanding the AI throughout your contact center.
Well, that wraps up our webinar on AI and voice in the contact center. Thank you so much to Thomas and the entire NLPearl team, for our partnership. It's been really exciting to do some of these multinational and global deployments with you. And of course, thank you to my colleague Randy, our CTO, for breaking down, as always, in ways we can understand the technical architecture of voice, and that makes a lot of this possible. And then finally, to our audience, we really appreciate you investing the time with us. If you'd like to learn more, have some discussions about AI and voice and how to think about your voice infrastructure, feel free to visit NLPearl's website at nlpearl.ai, and of course, AVOXI.com, or you can always reach out to us at sales@avoxi.com. Thank you again for joining us.